Have you ever seen the words Unix and Linux in a job post or tech article and felt confused about what they actually mean? They sound similar, and a lot of people mix them up, but they are not the same thing at all. To really understand them, we need to go back in time. The story starts in the late 1960s inside a famous research place in the United States called Bell Labs. At that time, computers were nothing like what we have today. They were huge, very expensive, and each machine had its own system to run software. That meant if you wrote a program for one computer, it would not work on another. This was a big problem for engineers. Imagine spending weeks building a program only to find out it can't be used anywhere else. Everything was locked to a single machine. So a group of engineers started thinking differently. What if there was one operating system that could work across different types of computers? One system that was simple, reusable, and not tied to a single machine? That idea led to something historic. In 1969, two engineers named Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie created a new operating system at Bell Labs. They called it Unix. Unix was small, fast for its time, and designed with a very clear way of thinking. It was not trying to do everything in a complicated way. Instead, it followed a simple rule: build small tools that do one job really well, and then combine them when needed. This simple idea became one of the most important principles in computing history. Unix was also special because of the programming language behind it. It was written in C language, which was also developed at Bell Labs. This was a huge deal because most operating systems at that time were tightly connected to the hardware they ran on. But C made Unix different. It allowed Unix to be more flexible and easier to move from one machine to another. For the first time, an operating system was not stuck to just one type of computer. This made Unix a game changer. Unix also introduced ideas that still exist in almost every modern system today. Things like, instead of thinking of files as random storage, Unix organized everything into a clear folder structure, like a tree starting from one main point. It also introduced the idea of connecting small programs together, so one tool could pass its output into another tool. This made work faster and more powerful. It also brought in user permissions, which control who can access files and what they can do with them. And of course, the command line interface, where users type instructions instead of clicking buttons. These ideas might sound normal today, but at that time, they were revolutionary. Unix slowly became the foundation for many systems that came later. Even if you don't realize it, modern operating systems like Mac OS, Android, and many server systems still carry the influence of Unix design. It didn't just solve a problem, it changed the way operating systems were built forever. And this is where our second part of the story begins. Years passed after Unix changed the computing world. Systems became more advanced, but one big problem still remained. Unix was powerful, but it was not free. It was controlled by companies, and only certain organizations could use it with expensive licenses. Now jump to 1991. A young student in Finland named Linus Torvalds was studying computer science. He was using a small teaching operating system called Minix to learn and experiment. But there was a problem. Minix had limits. It didn't allow him to freely change or improve the system the way he wanted. Linus wanted more freedom. He didn't just want to use an operating system, he wanted to build one. So he started working on his own system from scratch. At first, it was just a small personal project. Nothing serious. He even described it as just a hobby. But that hobby quickly started growing into something much bigger. He named it Linux. In a now famous message posted online, Linus shared his project with the world. He said he was building a free operating system and didn't expect it to become anything major or professional. But history had other plans. Linux started spreading, improving, and attracting developers from around the world. People began contributing ideas, fixing problems, and adding new features. Slowly, it grew from a simple student project into a global movement. Now here is the most important point to understand. Linux was inspired by Unix, but it is not Unix. Linus Torvalds designed Linux to behave like Unix. That means it follows similar ideas, similar structure, and even similar commands. But he did not copy Unix code. He built everything from the ground up. So you can think of it like this. Unix is the original system that started it all. Linux is a new system that follows the same style, but is completely independent. That difference is very important. Unix is owned by companies. It is closed software. You cannot see its source code, and you cannot freely change it. It is controlled, licensed, and usually expensive. Linux, on the other hand, is open source. That means its code is available for anyone to view, study, change, and share. This one idea, freedom, changed everything. Developers around the world could now build their own versions of Linux. They could improve it, customize it, and use it without paying heavy fees. This led to a huge wave of innovation in the tech world. Linux slowly started moving from a student project to something much more powerful. It began powering servers, systems, and eventually the internet itself. What started as a small idea became one of the most important operating systems in modern computing. And now that Linux exists, the next question is, how exactly is it different from Unix in real-world use? That's where things get even more interesting. Now that you know how Unix and Linux were born, the next step is to understand how they are actually different in real life. At first glance, they can look almost the same. Both use similar commands, both use a terminal, and both follow a similar structure. But under the surface, they are built very differently. One of the biggest differences is ownership. Unix is owned by companies. That means a single organization controls how it works, what gets changed, and when updates are released. If a business is using Unix, it usually has to buy a license and depend on the company for updates and support. Linux is completely different. It is open source, which means no single company owns it. Instead, it is built and improved by developers all around the world. Anyone can look at the code, change it, or even create their own version. This leads to another major difference: cost. Unix systems usually cost a lot of money. Big companies pay thousands of dollars for licenses and support, especially in enterprise environments. Linux is free to use. You can download it, install it, and run it without paying anything. Some companies do offer paid support, but the system itself remains free. This is one of the main reasons Linux became so popular. Now let's talk about where they are used. Unix is mostly found in large, traditional enterprise systems, things like old banking systems, corporate servers, and specialized industrial setups. It is known for being stable and reliable, but it is not as flexible or widely available. Linux, on the other hand, is everywhere. It runs on smartphones through Android. It powers most of the internet because the majority of web servers use Linux. It runs cloud platforms like AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. It is even used in supercomputers, satellites, and space missions. So while Unix is more limited to specific enterprise environments, Linux has become the backbone of modern technology. Another important difference is development speed. Unix updates are controlled by the company that owns it. That means if a bug is found or a new feature is needed, users must wait for the official vendor to release an update. This can take time. Linux works differently. Since it is open source, thousands of developers around the world can contribute. If a security issue is found, it can often be fixed very quickly by the community. This makes Linux faster to evolve and more adaptable to new technology. Even though they are different, Unix and Linux still share a lot in common when it comes to how users interact with them. They both use similar command line tools and follow similar design rules, which is why learning one makes the other easier to understand. But when it comes to flexibility, cost, and global use, Linux clearly takes the lead. Now that we understand how they differ in structure and usage, the next step is to look at where they are actually running today and how they power the modern world. At this point, the big picture starts to become clear, but the real surprise is where these systems are actually used today. Let's start with Unix. Unix is still alive, but it is mostly used in large, traditional enterprise systems. You'll find it in banks, old corporate servers, and big organizations that have been using it for decades. Systems like Solaris, AIX, and HPUX are all Unix-based. One interesting example is Mac OS. Apple's Mac OS is actually certified as a Unix system. That means when you use a Mac terminal, you are working on a system that follows Unix standards. Unix is known for being very stable and reliable, which is why companies that need extremely dependable systems still use it. But it comes with high cost and less flexibility. Now let's talk about Linux, where things get much bigger. Linux is everywhere. It runs on your Android phone, even if you never notice it. It powers almost all major web servers on the internet. In fact, most websites you visit every day are running on Linux behind the scenes. It also runs the entire cloud world. Platforms like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure depend heavily on Linux systems. Even more impressive, all of the world's top supercomputers run on Linux. It is used in scientific research, space missions, robotics, smart devices, and even things like traffic systems and smart TVs. So while Unix stayed mostly in controlled enterprise environments, Linux spread everywhere and became the foundation of modern computing. Now let's quickly compare them in a simple way. Unix started in 1969, while Linux began in 1991. Unix is closed source, meaning it is controlled by companies and not freely available. Linux is open source, meaning anyone can use, study, and improve it. Unix usually costs money and requires licenses. Linux is mostly free. Unix runs on specific hardware and controlled environments. Linux runs on almost anything, from phones and laptops to servers and supercomputers. Unix is powerful but limited in reach. Linux is powerful and everywhere. But here's the important part. They are still related in spirit. Both Unix and Linux share similar ideas. They use similar commands, similar file structures, and similar design philosophy. If you learn one, the other feels familiar. You can think of it like this. Unix is the original system, the foundation that started everything. Linux is the modern version of that idea, faster, free, and built by a global community. So what should you learn today? If you are entering tech, whether it's software development, DevOps, cybersecurity, or cloud computing, Linux is the clear starting point. It powers the systems you will actually work with in real jobs. The best part is, you don't need expensive tools to start. You can install Linux distributions like Ubuntu or Linux Mint for free and begin exploring right away. Even opening a terminal and trying simple commands can give you a strong foundation in how modern systems work. Unix helped build the past of computing. Linux is building its present and future, and now you understand both.